In one of the most dramatic sea collisions of recent years, the North Sea ferry Duke of York is cut cleanly in half after being struck by an American oil tanker during the early hours of a misty morning. The ferry's captain and crew, assisted by the crew of the Haiti Victory, performed heroically in taking 500 passengers and crew members aboard the crippled tanker, whose bow was cleanly cut by the impact. The Haiti Victory was bound for Bremen, turned back to take part in the rescue operations. The rescued are brought ashore at Harwich, most of them miraculously none the worse for their ordeal, with pathetic reminders of the nightmare hours. The seriously injured are brought in on stretchers to be taken to waiting ambulances. Some survivors took to the lifeboats, later to be picked up by rescue ships. But with the grim nature of the collision, the final death toll was held mercifully to 5, another tribute to sea bravery. Violence again flares in Western Canada as members of a fanatic sect of the Doukhobors set fire to homes and schools. All told, 16 residences are put to the torch during an outbreak which leaves scores homeless. Non-Doukhobor residents of the British Columbia area view the ruins of their homes. For the past 50 years, since settling in the section, extremist members of the sect have conducted periodical terrorist raids. And during the most recent, reinforced squads of Royal Mounted Police patrol the trouble spot. With the whole area an armed camp, man and dog guard the family homestead. Despite the tense atmosphere following the raids, members of the Doukhobors conduct their services in the traditional manner brought by their forefathers from Russia, acknowledging no law but their own. Say goodbye to Mama, children. She's off to the races. Last year, Linda was too young to leave with a sitter, so now Mrs. Barbara Gamachi of Long Island makes up for lost time and goes back to her favorite sport, stock car racing. The 23-year-old housewife, whose husband is also a jalopy jockey, says racing is such a change from housework, a bit more exciting, end of quote. 11A is her number. Sitter and kids are eager spectators as stock car mama gives Papa and the other male drivers a run for the money. Ricky roots for his daring mom, whose stock goes up with every race. One gal in a class of 600, you'd expect wolf whistles perhaps, but no. Mary Brown is more interested in her studies. Auto mechanics at the Greer Technical Institute in Chicago. The 600 males tip their hats respectfully to the Minnesota spinster who went back to school at the age of 72. She wants to know something about machinery so as to help her brother back home on the farm. Here's a gal who knows what goes on under the hood. How are they going to keep her down on the farm? Well, to start out with, we got this picture from France, and it says here that these styles have something to do with ski de printemps, which loosely translated means skiing in the springtime. Now, trying to keep up with my schoolgirl French and trying to watch the picture at the same time, it also reads, let me see. Oh yes, presentation of swimming suits at the Cabaret Carrère by the singer Gabriello. I guess this part must have something to do with the bathing suits, Yes. Yes. Here's a one-piece job that doesn't need any extra pieces. And as for songbird Gabriello, he just makes like King Lear. 3 cheers, it's Triple Threat Day at Palisades Park, New Jersey, with 30 sets of triplets on hand for their 8th annual convention. They come from all over, and they come in all ages and all dispositions. Some are glad, while other trios are triste, which means sad, and that's too bad. Consternation follows in the wake of this greatest collection of lookalikes ever assembled. Put yourself in thirsty Theodore's shoes. It's been a hot day. He'll have one for the road, and then go quietly. What's this? 3D? That's all, brother. Spectacular crash tests to increase air safety are made public for the first time. Obsolete Air Force transports end their careers on the wrecking ground before a battery of slow-motion cameras to yield precise information on just how crash fires start, blazes that do kill more passengers than the actual impact of the crash. Under scientifically controlled conditions, the doomed transport makes its final run at the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics Ohio testing grounds, a sacrifice that will pay off in human lives saved. The fuel tanks rip open and a deadly blaze results. But the array of testing devices tells the engineers how and why. The first step in licking the problem. The sacrifice is not in vain. Another test under the same conditions, but this time, newly developed fire control devices have been installed to inert or damp out the causes of the crash fire, and it's snuffed out before it starts. These new safety devices are too bulky and heavy for general use now. Months, perhaps years of development lie ahead, but the goal is already in sight.
We'll come to the point about this story and make no bones about it. The Hermann First family in Bernhoven, Germany, is owned by a couple of poodles who have collectors of shaggy dog stories talking to one another. These dogs are able to say Mama. Of course, they have an accent. But listen to this Wunderhund.
Das ist aber fein. Mama, sagt Mama, das ist ganz fein, sagt sie. Mama, Mama. Ja. Das ist schön, sagt sie. Ja. Das ist schön.
Our tale is told, but it has us wagging our head. Here's a last word in his native tongue.
In Korea, 3 years of combat end as United Nations and communist negotiators at Panmunjom sign a truce. The long war, undertaken to stop red aggression, is over. The enemy holds less territory than before his troops marched, but the cost has been bitter for both sides. With fighting ended, a political conference is slated to deal with the touchy problem of unifying Korea and assuring peace. Neutral observers are already present to oversee adherence to armistice terms. And in Washington, a dramatic evening press conference at the White House sets the stage as President Eisenhower formally breaks the good news to the nation, adding his counsel against over-optimism in the face of the many problems that still lie ahead.
We have won an armistice on a single battleground, not peace in the world. We may not now relax our guard nor cease our quest. Throughout the coming months, during the period of prisoner screening and exchange, and during the possibly longer period of the political conference which looks toward the unification of Korea, we and our United Nation allies must be vigilant against the possibility of untoward developments. And as we do so, we shall fervently strive to ensure that this armistice will, in fact, bring free peoples one step nearer to their goal of a world at peace.
Solemn ceremonies on Governor's Island are a grim reminder that for many, the Korean armistice came too late. First Army Commander General Withers A. Burris presents a posthumous Silver Star Medal to the mother of Sergeant Raymond S. Taylor for his gallantry in action in Korea. Looking on are the dead soldier's father and his German fiancée who came to America to attend the sad occasion. Holland's Air Force celebrates its 40th year with a gala air show for the Queen, and allied NATO nations send aircraft to make the occasion a roaring success. Thousands look on as a flight of jets in tight formation opens the show. The Dutch Meteor fighters are followed by Titanic US B-36s, our intercontinental atom bombers. stalker Hunter puts on a hair-raising performance. Another look at the Hunter, Britain's latest. It's already surpassed the speed of sound. Bringing the curtain down, a flight of U.S. Boeing B-47s, Stratojet bombers boasting fighter plane speed. An impressive display of the free world's wings for defense on the ready in Western Europe. Midsummer madness grips the Spanish town of Pamplona. 'Tis time for the folding of the bulls. Once a year on St. Firmin's Day, the young men of Pamplona lock horns with El Toro in a wild, mad dash through the streets. A bruise is a badge of honor this day, though it's not dishonorable to duck if you duck in time. Seems this fella didn't, but he's okay, and don't ask me how or why. The street is so jammed, it's hard to find room to steer clear of steer. The bull ring is reached, but the show is far from over. If you're wondering just how bull baiters manage to stay alive, go right ahead. We're wondering too. Only slight bruises, reports our local correspondent. Bones must be made of rubber here in Pamplona. This is a Spanish version of the morning hour rush on the subway, with plenty of beefing being done by all hands. On Capitol Hill, the sponsor of a bill to repeal the 20% tax on movie admissions, Noah Mason, returns to his office after passage of the bill by Congress. Ahead lies presidential signature or rejection. Congressman Mason explains what repeal of the tax will mean.
This bill, in the next 12 months, will save 5,000 theaters in the small towns and cities of our nation from closing their doors due to high costs and taxes. The removal of this tax will not threaten Treasury revenue. My studies have indicated that the Treasury will in all probability gain revenue rather than lose it by keeping the theaters open. I applaud the House and Senate leadership for their foresight in leading the way for the relief of business. I am confident that this is the first step toward restoring a sound American economy under this administration.
No chump is Jerry the chimp. He knows what to do about the weather when it waxes warm at Anaheim, California. Nobody ever told him chimpanzees were supposed to be allergic to water. Heck no. Jerry's just mad about the wet stuff, especially on a hot day. Only thing Jerry is allergic to is soap. That and pals who don't like water. Ah, there's one now. Duck, Mary. Jerry spotted you, and his ire is aroused. He can't stand ducks not taking the water. So he takes them there himself. Mary is contrary, but Jerry is quicker. They used to call her Bathless Mary, but she's bathless no longer. Jerry's gonna teach her to swim or else. Mary finally ducked out on him, so Jerry goes to the showers to cool off all over again. Yep, it's all or nothing with Jerry.
Hey! They're ready, folks.
For refreshment that is great.
If it's early or it's late,
It's Orange Crush,
Orange Crush, the drink that's extra good.
fresh fruit flavor.
That's for me, it tastes better.
Naturally,
Orange Crush, Orange Crush,
get some right away.
Visit our refreshment stand right away for delicious Orange Crush and all kinds of good things to eat.
1953, the eyes of the world were on the White House in Washington, D.C., where Harry S. Truman greeted his successor, Dwight D. Eisenhower, new President of the United States. After 20 years, a Republican returned to the White House. Ike, as he is familiarly known to fellow Americans, receiving his oath from the Chief Justice, the late Fred M. Vinson. A dramatic moment in the life of a soldier statesman, now the 35th President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower and his Vice President, Richard Nixon. The names of two lawmakers, Taft and Hartley, were prominent in the news. And the death of Senator Robert Taft, Mr. Republican, co-author of the controversial labor bill, saddened the nation. Bob Taft had earned the respect of friend and foe alike. The president lost a wise guide and counselor. The death of Russia's Premier Joseph Stalin was big news in 1953. Of two Stalin heirs, Malenkov won out over Beria, and the free world wondered what next from the Kremlin. Good news for the free world from West Germany, where Chancellor Adenauer won re-election, pledging Germany's continued support of NATO and the West, a resounding no to communism. Vatican City, Rome. Pope Pius XII presiding over the consistory, elevating new members to the College of Cardinals. Scenes of ancient religious pomp and ceremony. The cardinals designate prostrating themselves before the altar to take the vows of high office. James Cardinal McIntyre of Los Angeles was one of the new princes of the church. Canada's first general election in 4 years brought 5.5 million eligible voters to the polls. Victory went to the Liberal incumbents led by Prime Minister Saint Laurent. Coronation Fleet Review at Spithead for England's new Queen Elizabeth II, the greatest peacetime fleet in history, in a salute to Britain's newly crowned monarch. Even Russian ships were there. Diplomatic courtesy to the new Elizabeth, Britons hoped would bring back the glory of ancient Elizabethan times. 1953, year of disasters brought into sharp focus in Holland. The worst storms in 500 years lashed the North Sea. Flood tides and hurricane winds pounded the dikes, for centuries Holland's bulwark against the sea. Despite heroic efforts to reinforce the dikes, the sea broke through, inundating 1/6 of the country. The land wrested from the sea centuries ago was lost to the raging torrent temporarily. During the nightmare of flood and terror, thousands lost their lives. But Holland faced disaster bravely, with help and sympathy from a queen. Disaster struck in Greece, too. Earthquakes jarred the fabled Ionian Isles. For days, the earth shook. Buildings, then entire towns, toppled. Trapped in the ruins, hundreds perished and thousands were injured. U.S. Navy units assisted in the rescue and relief of the stunned islanders who buried their dead and faced the cruel task of reconstruction. Disaster left scars that will take a long time to heal. The June rebellion of enslaved workers in East Berlin and elsewhere behind the Iron Curtain gave tangible proof to free men that all was not well with communism. Rioting Berliners turned on their commie masters, venting their pent-up spleen on red officials, and police were powerless to stop them. For days, anti-Reds rioted in East Berlin, and only the arrival of Russian tanks and troops saved the day for Moscow-trained stooges in power in East Germany. The temper of the enslaved peoples was graphically displayed. Men threw rocks at tanks. All was not well behind the Iron Curtain. In contrast to violence in East Berlin were scenes like these in West Berlin, where East Berliners lined up quietly to receive food, much of it a gift of the United States. Weapon in the Cold War, freedom's answer to hunger riots behind the Iron Curtain. The atom bomb posed the problems of preventing war and protecting citizens. Real houses with unreal occupants placed in the target area during tests could help man answer the question, is there any defense against the bomb? of the unleashed atom strikes the house. The first atomic cannon. An atomic punch on the ground as well as in the air gave us a powerful new weapon of defense, another deterrent against aggression. 6 of the new guns were shipped to Europe during the year to bolster the forces of freedom in the defense against communist imperialism. A kangaroo with wings, a B-36 bomber converted into a flying aircraft carrier. Long-range bombers could fly close to enemy targets, release the atom bomb-carrying jet fighters to dive down to the attack. Range of the bomber plus speed of the fighter effectively combined for swift retaliation in case of enemy attack on these United States. Mission completed, jet returns to mother plane, catching the hook suspended from the bomb bay. New weapons and new methods to keep us strong and free. Truce in Korea, top story of 1953. The end of 3 years of bitter, costly conflict. The agreement was signed for the United Nations by General William Harrison, for the Reds by North Korea's Nam Il. Big problems remained to be solved at the conference table, but a big step forward had been taken, and the last shell was fired on the Korean front, at least for the time being. What lay ahead, no man could prophesy. But for these GIs, at least, the war was over. They were alive and going home. Through Freedom Gate came the POWs, prisoners of the Reds for long months and years, many of them sick in body and mind. But they smiled now that freedom was here. Others were not so fortunate. Torture, neglect, death at the hands of the communists. Free men would not forget. General William Dean, the hero of Tejon, back from 3 years of captivity. Arrogant to the last were the prisoners we released. In a defiant gesture, the die-hard Reds discarded their clothing provided by the UN allies. A grim lesson to the free world that the truce in Korea might well be but the prelude to aggression elsewhere in the world. 1953 brought hopes for peace. But in a world split by isms and by fears, Americans pondered the lessons of Korea and gave heed to their president.
We have won an armistice on a single battleground, not peace in the world. We may not now relax our guard nor cease our quest.
The Festival of Britain gets into full swing at Battersea Park's Midway. Or maybe we should say it really gets rolling along because the rotor seems to be the big attraction. This ingenious amusement device really rolls them. The customers stand against the walls and centrifugal force takes care of the details. The floor drops out from under you and you're pinned to the whirling sides as the speed is stepped up. Remember, this comes under the head of pleasure. Austerity is forgotten, and the English are having a giddy time. Once again, the British have their backs to the wall, but as usual, they come up standing.